The movie begins with a young man named David attending classes at school. He has a crush on a girl named Millie, but is too afraid to confess his feelings. When they were outside the classroom, David planned to give a gift to Millie. He felt nervous, but it turned out Millie liked the gift. Suddenly, someone quite annoying named Mark appeared. Mark took the gift and threw it into the frozen lake. Despite Millie's warning that it was very dangerous, David still took the gift and succeeded.
David! Millie, don't go!
Suddenly, the icy lake collapsed. David fell into it and was swept away by the water, drowning. He couldn't breathe while Millie screamed for help. Unexpectedly, David suddenly teleported into a library, soaking wet. The people there were astonished. After that, David returned home. There, he lived only with his father, whom he considered unkind, while his mother left him when he was 5 years old. His father was angry because David ignored him. As his father broke down the door to his room, David suddenly teleported back to the previous library. The library was empty. David was confused about his whereabouts. He tried to move again, but suddenly David teleported back to his room. At that moment, David thought of utilizing that ability. If his mother could leave, then he could leave too. That's what crossed his mind. At Millie's house, she felt sad about what happened to David. Millie heard something outside. The swing moved on its own. She went out and saw the gift David had given her, making her feel like David was still alive. Later on, David decided to rent a room to live in. With that ability, David worked hard to control it so that he could use it as he wished. So David's ability is that when he has seen a place before, if he can control it, he can instantly go to that place. At that time, David was only 15 years old. One day, he intended to go to a bank and find a reason to use the toilet in hopes of being able to see the bank's vault there so that he could go there without being noticed. When the bank was already closed and unguarded, David immediately took action. Although his power wasn't fully under control, David managed to jump into the bank and take a lot of money from there. Several years later, as David grew up, his life became more prosperous. Everything he did felt easy, like jumping around effortlessly. Now, he lives in a high-class apartment.
How they doing? You never know.
At a bar, David wanted to have fun and approach a girl. Because he was accustomed to his ability, his power was accidentally seen by a young man his age. After that incident, the next day David once again used his ability to have fun without fear of the consequences. He even managed to sunbathe on top of the Sphinx statue in Egypt. As David returned to his apartment, he was surprised by a man with white hair named Roland. Roland was a paladin who hunted down all jumpers like David. For years, Roland has been tracking down the whereabouts of jumpers and killing them one by one. Because jumpers are criminals who can harm others. Despite David's denial that he jumped for good reasons, Roland remained determined to capture and even kill the jumpers. Eventually, a battle erupted between the jumpers and the paladin. Since the weakness of the jumpers lies in their minds, if they can't think of a place, they can't teleport there. Therefore, Roland uses a 1000-volt shock electric to disrupt their minds. When pressed, David finally managed to escape by jumping to his old room. At that moment, his father heard the noise from David's room and approached. His father apologized and wanted to see David. He felt crazy because he thought he was talking to himself when he broke into David's room. However, when he entered, David was already gone. One day, David went to Millie's place. He planned to meet her to ask about her. but only Millie's mother was there while Millie was working at a bar. Then David went to Millie's workplace. There, he just sat and stared at Millie for 45 minutes without saying anything, then left. As he was about to leave, David bumped into his former annoying schoolmate named Mark. Mark was surprised that David was still alive, but David seemed not to recognize him, unwilling to engage in a lengthy conversation. Later, Millie approached David and was surprised to find out that David was still alive. Finally, David admitted that he was indeed the person who had drowned in the lake before. As usual, Mark didn't change at all. Instead, he bothered Millie, which made David angry, leading to a fight between them. Using his ability, David pushed Mark and then teleported into a bank he had previously robbed, leaving Mark behind there. After that, David returned and met Millie again. Although Millie was confused about where Mark had gone, David told her to forget about it because it was certain that Mark wouldn't be back for quite some time. They went back into the bar and chatted. David mentioned wanting to go on vacation to Rome, which was actually Millie's dream destination all along. Finally, David invited Millie, and the two of them went on vacation there. In short, they had arrived in Rome. On the other hand, Roland interrogated Mark, who had been inside the bank without robbing it. After obtaining the information, Roland called his members to take action immediately. While they both enjoyed their vacation in Rome, unbeknownst to them, a young man who was at the bar was watching. It turns out the young man named Griffin was also a jumper. As they were in a place where the door was locked because entry was not allowed, David asked Millie to stay there while he looked for a way to get in. Later, Griffin appeared, warning David to be cautious because there were many hunters. Confused by his words, David felt uneasy and wanted to get rid of Griffin by teleporting him away. However, David was surprised when Griffin could teleport just like him. Griffin admitted that not only David was a jumper, but he was also a jumper. Griffin warned David to be careful because hunters would arrive soon. Thus, a battle between the paladin and the jumper ensued. Later, the jumper won the fight. However, the staff of the place became aware of the commotion and sought help. As David and Millie were about to leave, David was arrested by the police and taken to the station. After David was interrogated, when the officers left him, suddenly a woman came and freed him. It turned out the woman was David's mother. Later, his mother instructed him to leave the place immediately and leave Millie to ensure her safety. After that, she left while David was confronted by the guards but managed to overcome them. Later, they went to the airport. David said that Millie had to go home alone without him. Although Millie was initially hesitant because she wasn't told the reason, she eventually went home alone. One night at David's father's house, Roland came looking for information about David. David's father refused to say anything about David, which ultimately led to David's father being killed by Roland. The next morning, David decided to return to his father's house. There, he found his father had passed away, even though David had taken him to the hospital. One day, David went to Griffin's hiding place in a cave in the desert. David approached Griffin and planned to kill Roland, but Griffin refused because it was very dangerous to deal with the paladins. Afterward, they went to calm themselves down by teleporting to Tokyo while bringing a car. On the way, they talked and eventually they made the decision to get rid of Roland.
We'll team up now or never.
David's initial plan was to ensure Millie's well-being. Unexpectedly, Roland also moved to where Millie was, ultimately forcing David to teleport Millie to Griffin's headquarters. Then, as Roland entered the room, he found traces of David using his advanced gadget. Immediately after that, Roland followed the teleportation hole created by David. When David and Griffin realized this, they immediately hid before Roland discovered their whereabouts. Their fight then occurred, and David found himself cornered by the electric wire entangling him. However, Griffin helped him by spewing fire toward Roland. Meanwhile, seeing David helpless, Millie helped him by cutting the electric wire. At that moment, Griffin returned with the device owned by Roland, which was used to guard the teleportation hole, aiming to prevent Roland from following them again. However, before the teleportation hole closed, Roland managed to pull Millie and used her as leverage to lure the teleporters to him. Griffin planned to detonate Roland, but David stopped him because Millie was still there. Griffin insisted on the plan as it was a sacrifice, leading to a fight between them.
We're talking, huh? Am I getting?
Shit, that's a nice move. You know, it didn't have to be this way.
The teleportation battle was won by David, and he quickly helped Millie. However, unfortunately, David fell into Roland's plan and ended up being tied up with an electric wire. When Roland tried to kill David, suddenly, with the power of David's love for Millie, an extraordinary force emerged, and David managed to teleport the room into the water. Millie moved towards David, which made David alert, and then he teleported back to the library. Everyone was safe, but Roland, powerless without his advanced equipment, was eventually removed by being transported to a remote location. One day, David found information about his mother's whereabouts and visited her. He found a girl who turned out to be his stepsister. Even more surprising, he learned that his mother was a paladin. With this confession from his mother, it was revealed that she left David at the age of 5 to ensure his safety from the pursuit of the paladins until he grew up, and the movie ends.